order at 7:20. Are there public comments? I do not have any comment cards.
If you all, anyone who's planning on speaking or doing the presentation, if you don't mind filling out one of the comment forms in the back, just so we have the information when the people write the minutes, want to get your name spelled right and all that. So the forms are back there.
Would you like us to do it now or at the end?
Your preference.
Get some for you. Thank you.
Okay, in the absence of opening comments then, we'll move on to PC 19-037, GLUA 19-00005, HR 1901, and I hope I don't have to say that more than once. Review of alterations to a designated structure at 602 7th Street, which is the Oddfellows Hall. And we will begin with commission report.
Should we read the?
This is a public hearing.
It is. And I think we skipped it last time because it was a continuance and we didn't have any comments. And so we
I
didn't.
remember that.
Yeah.
All right. If you will refer to the poster on the left, that will give you a little bit of information about quasi-judicial hearings. We have one public hearing on the land use application scheduled for tonight. A staff report has been prepared for that item and has been made available to the public at least 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in state law and Oregon City Municipal Code, and the steps are shown on the chart on the wall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city can notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony by stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material where the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they're not given to staff, they will not be included in the public record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence, testimony, or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So we will now open the record for Oregon City file number PC 19037. GLUA 1900-00005 HR 1901, a request to make alterations to a designated structure at 602 7th Street, the Oddfellows Hall. Does any commissioner have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare?
No.
Nope. No. And nor have I. I will state for the record, however, that I am a real estate broker in Oregon, and in that capacity, I assist buyers and sellers of residential property throughout the area, including some in the Kenema and McLaughlin districts. The property under review is not for sale, and as a result, there is no actual conflict of interest. While I do have expertise in market values in this area, any decision I make will be based exclusively on the approval criteria. Does any member of the audience wish to question any of the commissioners about these disclosures? Has everyone visited the site?
Yes.
And I have as well. We will now proceed with the planning staff report.
Thank you, Chair Basinger. This request is for the addition of a projecting sign and wall signs on the front and side facades of the Oddfellows Hall, a designated historic structure in the McLaughlin Conservation District. The location is at the corner of 7th Street and Washington Street, and address 602 7th. Front facade of the building was historically used as the Oddfellows Hall on the second story, and the ground floor has always been some sort of retail use or storefront. It's been used over the years as hardware store, as a restaurant and ballroom. And the current applicant would be a restaurant use as well. And the building was built in 1922 and is one of the few commercial structures that are intact from this era, with this type of architectural style. The Washington Street facade is a lot simpler, and the applicant is also, the doors here on the right photo are going to be altered, and that was approved a few months back. The proposed projecting sign is on the corner of the building, a vertical sign attached on this second story, kind of in line with the bottom and top of the windows on the second story of the building. And it reflects one of the historic signs on the building for Frederick Hardware. You can see in the photo on the right. This sign would have illuminated lettering. I think it's referred to as push-through lettering. There's also a wall sign proposed on the 7th Street facade above the entryway. This would be an internally illuminated sign with light bulbs around the perimeter. And it's a reader board type of sign. And I've just for informative purposes, I have a picture of one of the previous tenants in the building, the sign above the entryway as well. The wall signs on Washington Street, there are two, one kind of closer to the corner and then one above the rear garage doors. Both are, have the same illuminated lettering that's the push-through style. So getting into the criteria, there are a few Secretary of Interior standards that apply directly to this request. One is that additions or exterior alterations should not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property, and that the new work should be differentiated from the old but still be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, and massing. So, you know, this is an addition, it's just an alteration, it's not going to affect the massing, and it doesn't propose to remove or destroy any materials. But so the signs placed here, you know, there's a lot of blank wall space on this facade. Staff doesn't see any issues with the placement or any effect on the historic building design. And then this one, it's really about the spatial relationships for this one. And so we do have a recommendation to decrease the size of this sign to allow more space in between the red brick detailing above and below the sign and the edge of the sign. And so if you look at the, on the left, to the left of that sign in the photo, you can see the High Cliff sign. That one leaves about a brick height worth of space above and below. And so the condition of approval would be to kind of replicate that spacing. Otherwise, the proposal meets this standard. The second bullet there says changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or elements from other historic properties, will not be undertaken. So this one, you know, there are no like architectural features that are being added that would insinuate that the building is a different architectural style. But this specific sign design harkens to a theater sign. And so because of the reader board and the bulbs around the outside, it's kind of like a theater marquee. And so I do have some concerns that that specific design would create a sense that this building used to be a theater when in fact it was not. And so I do have concerns about that. There was a theater on this block. If you look at the Sanborn maps, this is 7th Street, here's Washington. This is from 1950. This is the Oddfellows Hall building right here. And then you can see right next to it, that says movies. So I think that there maybe was a theater next to this, and I didn't have any photos of it. I'm not sure how long it was there, what it looked like. But we know that the Oddfellows Hall was never used as a theater. We do see the theater marquee signs on a lot of old theaters and used in the situations where an old theater building is redeveloped into a new use. For example, the Columbia store in Selwood used to be a Selwood theater, and that has a very similar sign with the lights around the outside. And so that, you know, is used in a situation where the building does have history as a theater. We did get comments, we solicited comments from SHPO to get their opinion on this, the State Historic Preservation Agency or Office. And the comments there was a previous version of the design, and SHPO's comments said, yes, this does create a false sense of history. It was a projecting sign that was kind of even more in the theater style. So the applicant has since revised the design to be a wall sign, and has made it smaller. And so, I think that does help. And I think it is, there's less of an issue, because of that. And I did just hear back from SHPO today. I sent them the revised design, to see if they, had a different opinion, and I'll pass that out, and I'll read it. So this is from Joy Sears, with State Historic Preservation Office. She says, I am still not convinced that the wall sign marquee is appropriate for this building, but if it can be installed to be connected just in the masonry joints and be fully reversible with minimal damage to the historic brick masonry, then I would recommend approval. So we do have, I think that it's clear that the SHPO staff agrees that the design is better from a standpoint of the creating a false sense of history. The Secretary of Interior has guidance on signs specifically as well. That includes sign placement, should not obscure significant features of the building. New signs should respect the size, scale, and design of the historic building. Often features or details will suggest a motif for the new signs. And I think the applicant has done a good job of, using that corner of the building with the projecting sign, and kind of placing it where that old window or where the existing windows are on the second story, to meet that guidance. And then the last one is that about materials. So materials should be characteristic of the building's period and style. This one is interesting because I think these materials, while we are using metal, there's also the illuminated lettering, and kind of the marquee reader board, which maybe wasn't typical materials. But I think we need to balance some of these guidelines with also the requirement that we differentiate new from old. So I think the modern design certainly differentiates new from old, and I think that it can be found to be compatible as a modern design. And then we also have in our own Oregon City design guidelines for new construction. This isn't new construction, but I think it is informative, so I want to share with you what our design guidelines say about signs. That internally illuminated cabinet signs are not allowed, that wall or projecting signs may be illuminated by concealed sources or by compatible exposed fixtures, and that panel signs should incorporate an applied edge molding to provide depth and a finished look. So my recommendation for the projecting sign is to approve it as is. The placement and design are compatible, and the illumination, while it is not, it is technically internally illuminated, but it's modern, and I think, we would allow neon. We have neon in the McLaughlin Conservation District, and I think that this push-through lettering is kind of like a modern version of neon. And so for that reason, I think it, is differentiated, it's modern, and it is compatible. Doesn't adversely affect the building. The wall signs on Washington Street are the same, with the internally illuminated lettering. It does not adversely affect the building. The placement doesn't cover any building features. And the applied edge molding, I don't think is needed I think the modern design, is different, and that guideline is more written for like a wood panel sign. The wall sign on 7th Street, I would recommend approval with the following conditions: that the size and the size be reduced to leave space in between the sign and the red brick detailing. And I think that could be based on, I think I wrote 3 inches in the staff report. I don't know exactly how tall those bricks are. They might be less than 3 inches, and so I would maybe recommend that we change that to a brick height, one brick, if the board agrees with that. And then because of the theater marquee design and the issue with creating a false sense of history, my recommendation is to replace the bulbs along the perimeter of the sign with some other element that doesn't suggest or harken back to a theater marquee design. And unless there are questions, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here? Are you the applicants? Do you have anything you would like to say?
Just a few clarifying questions.
Come forward and state your name and,
My name is Natalia Pascuzzi,
okay.
and I work with Meyer Co. with the client Smoke Daddies. Thank you for the presentation, Kelly. That was awesome. So one of the main clarifying questions that we have is, obviously it's surrounding the marquee sign on the front, and we can completely acknowledge that there may be concerns with essentially false advertising. One of the things that I want to be really clear about is what is defined as going too far with the theater sign look. At this point, is it the assumption that the bulbs are going to be flashing? Or is it the assumption that there's going to be movement that designates a standard old retro theater sign, right? Because if it's a soft glow, and if it's just light that's, the border, to me, that may be flexible, but I want to get feedback on that. Another thing is the intensity of the light. And then also, is it the background and it being such a contrast between the light and the background? If we have it be a little more in line with the feel of the other signs, would that also be open for consideration? So I guess I want to understand sort of where the line is and what kind of flexibility we have with that, because the overall feel is that this is meant to be a place of entertainment, not only below with the restaurant, but up above, there's going to be a community event space. And so the energy of that is something that we want to make sure we capture. And so that's why at this point, the hope is that there can be some flexibility. So could we talk about it?
When we get to our discussion portion of this, after we hear any public testimony regarding it, we can invite you back up.
Okay.
And go into it there.
Perfect.
But first, we want to hear from the public. And,
Absolutely. So, essentially, that's it. Are we good with everything else?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Denise.
Good evening again, and I had hoped that Cameron McCready was going to be able to be here tonight to represent the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, but he is been unfortunately detained. I'm here tonight representing the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, and I want to let the board know that Cameron and I did meet with Natalia, Tom, and Manesh, and Steve. And we had a discussion about the previous proposal, and we were there basically to offer advice on how they could submit a proposal that would meet the requirements of the Historic Review Board and have be respectful of the building. Claire's may be the only one on the board but that knows this, but anyway, this building is probably one of the most significant commercial structures in the McLaughlin Conservation District, and we are so fortunate to have the daughter of the owner of the hardware store, still living in our neighborhood and going very strong at 90. She is just amazing and has lots of interesting stories about growing up, working in the store, being in the store, and there's lots of fun. An interesting fact that I want to just mention is when I moved to Oregon City and started working for the city, the Oddfellows were still meeting. So I was able to go upstairs during one of their off times and, as I like to call it, the Grand Poobah chair, and the whole 9 yards, and see how it was decorated in their ceremonial chambers. It's pretty amazing. So, it's just, unfortunate that some of these clubs, due to the fact that they have members that are aging, are not really around much anymore, but there's still some Oddfellows halls that are still operating in the Portland area, but this one, they have merged their chapter in with another chapter, but it was quite interesting. So if any of you were ever fans of the Flintstones and saw the Royal Order of the Water Buffaloes, it was kind of like that. That's kind of what it reminded me of. But it's an interesting building, and as Kelly said, it's been a number of uses over the years. The Little Red Hen, an antique store, as you know, several restaurants. And so hopefully, fourth time's a charm.
Dance studio.
Pardon?
Dance
studio, yes, dance studio upstairs, yes. Was it Marilyn was upstairs for a while?
It was downstairs where the left entrance is.
Yeah, left entrances, yeah. So anyway, it's been a few things, and people are very interested in making sure that, something that's contributes to the neighborhood, and we think it will. Anyway, we were very pleased to see the revised design of the corner sign, because it's really very much in keeping with the style of the building. And I think we agree with Kelly's recommendation that it does differentiate between the new and the old. So, but it's still got that feel and style. And as a matter of fact, when we were talking with the applicants, I mentioned the Hung Far Low sign in Portland that's very reminiscent of that Frederick Hardware sign. And unfortunately, Hung Far Low is no longer there. The one concern that was brought to my attention was regarding the Washington Street facade. And do you have that on your screen? So the concern is if you can imagine, and obviously, if we could maybe see through the building, but that corner right there is super busy. And the question that I had from Cameron was it necessary to have the second sign? He was very supportive of the sign that's over the doorway here on the right that says Smoke Daddy's Lounge, but is the sign on the left needed because it adds to a little more clutter at that intersection? You're, trying to look at the light, you've got a pedestrian signal, you've got this going on, you've got this telephone pole, you got all this stuff going on there, and it's going to be pretty visible that when you're at that intersection that you can see that that's where that lounge is. So that was his only concern, but we do appreciate the fact that we were able to meet with the applicants and that this is really appropriate for the building. I think we would also agree that we concur with Kelly's recommendation regarding the reader board type sign on the 7th Street facade that I did finally blow it up. So I didn't, I read your report, I couldn't quite tell what those little things were around the edge, but you said that those are lights.
Bulbs.
So I think as your suggestion is that there is a way to maybe you do a neon band or a lighted band of some sort as opposed to light bulbs, that might be more appropriate. We did not have any objection to the size. As a matter of fact, we suggested that maybe it be a little more rectangular to allow for that option that Kelly spoke of regarding its separation from the brick courses. So that, we would be supportive of that. But yes, I think in general, we do concur with the staff recommendation and would support that, minus the little lights. Like I said, maybe there's a way they can do a band of light around it instead of those little lights, because I don't think they'll be flashing or doing anything like that. But again, because that is a 100% corner, I know they want to try to garner some attention, but I think by the mere fact that something is in there, that will be the attention. I think that people will notice it right off the bat. And I think that will be to their advantage. But like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on at that intersection, right, particularly there. So
Okay.
if there's not an objection, we would support removing the one sign and keeping the one over the doorway. Any
Okay.
questions?
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you so much for the
Thank you.
time.
Okay. Now with that input and seeing that since there's no one else here, I'm going to guess there's no more public testimony coming. So if you would like to come back forward, we can discuss what the options might be regarding the reader board sign. And what we'd like to come up with is something
You can bring
that
a chair up if they want.
is consistent with the wishes of the neighborhood and compatible with city code.
Of course.
So, you asked what, for clarification on what the objection was to the theater marquee look. And I think Kelly spoke to that in that it suggests something that never happened there. That maybe once upon a time there was a theater there. Well, there wasn't. I personally liked the idea that Denise suggested about a neon band about there, but I'd be very interested to hear what other board members think.
Before comment, has the signage also been reviewed against the sign code?
They don't have sign permits yet, so we want to do this first, but I did check, make sure that the size of their signs would meet our current sign code.
Well, so we're not
'Cause I was
fighting
gonna
against, yeah.
Make the note that flashing signs are not allowed in Oregon City in any circumstance.
I did not know that.
That's correct, and
Yeah.
I think their application stated that the lights would not be flashing, that they would be bulbs lit, but not flashing or moving.
Right.
Correct.
I've often wondered why Howell's old-fashioned pogo stick sign doesn't work.
Work
Now I
anymore.
know. Never knew that before. Okay.
I have, not a problem, but the whiteness of it is, and I don't know if there's a way that you can have it like a different background color, not as white, but more that kind of blends in with kind of a brickier, earthier color. But then instead, and then also instead of the neon, and this is just my idea, so I'm just throwing it out there, is to have some type of applied edge molding, and instead of the neon, is to have, you know how on some of the older buildings, they have that gooseneck kind of a lamp, you know, that shines on it?
You
You
mean
know,
from the top?
yeah, so it's like not bright out this way, it shines down and it, you know, shines on, so it's still lit, but it's not the neon or the, you know, the LED bulbs and stuff. And I don't know if that's, you know, possible, but it kind of more blends in with the building. You know, and the age of the building. But, you know, it's just so stark as
There's a
opposed,
huge contrast between the two, the building
Yeah.
and the sign.
right.
Yeah.
So that's just, you know, my suggestion, and I don't know if, you know, that would light it enough. I imagine that if you you could probably still do the LED, but it wouldn't be right there all around it.
May I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. I understand the comment to the starkness. Would something as simple as having that black be a different color help alleviate that contrast, because at this point, I mean, and granted, I'm looking at this picture here, but the building itself is
And
rather.
that's what we're looking at on
Yeah,
our screens.
the building itself is rather light in background. And so what, to me, what's creating that contrast is that thick black border. So if we had it in line with maybe some of the softer colors that we already have in our palette, or something a little more complementary to that wall there,
Like the-
would that
A
be?
brown, more earth tone, you know?
Just something, you know, I don't want to commit to a specific color.
Yeah, the red of the brick
But,
or something.
yeah, just something would, I think that, you know, visually, aesthetically, I think that would dim the contrast a little bit. One of the things that, why we had the white in the background is, the ability for readability is really important, especially on a really busy road like that. So having the black lettering against the white was the best way to do that. So that contrast is important. The border, I'm sure we're flexible on, though. I think that would help quite a bit. And we can always draw something up, too.
Somebody wants to
It's
say.
okay. I know there's only 2 seats. I'm Tony Montoya. I'm with the Meyer Sign Company as well. I'm the sales manager as well as a project manager. A couple things to just address or to keep in mind with your suggestions. I know where you're going with it. One of the first things is that this is just a conceptual rendering. So because it's done digitally, it's really difficult to actually match what the white is going to be versus the photo that's actually presented. Time of day, all that kind of stuff plays
Right.
into it. So there is not going to be that stark, like bleached white look to it when it actually gets up on there. When it's brand new, yes, but as signs all hit weather and age and dirt gets on them and that kind
Can
of
you
thing.
make
we
it
really
something
want-
though besides, I mean, just the stark white as, you know, make it more of, I don't know if there, I don't know what's out there and whether you can like powder coat it or, you know, I have no idea.
The actual material is plastic or Lexan, so there are off-white colors that could be used. One of the biggest complications, I think, with changing the actual background color of either the light or the actual material used is still having readability for what the business is going to eventually want to advertise. The letters themselves would have to be changed to a different color so that you could still see them. If you start darkening the actual background, the letters themselves will almost disappear as well. So it really alleviates the whole point of
Point of
I think,
the
having
thing,
it,
right,
which is
right.
really to advertise what's going on in the event center that's upstairs.
I don't think you were talking about.
Not a darker, no,
a
just
huge
something
change
not
in
quite
just-
as stark, you
Yeah.
know?
So maybe like a
Appliance.
warmer white
Oh,
color.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's-
no,
that's-
I'm not talking about making it like brown or something, you know, in the back, just
Sure.
something that's not quite as
Yes.
stark. Cause it kind of almost jumps out, which there's good things for you for that.
Yes.
But, you know, with the building, you know, it's got its age and everything and, you know, which is awesome, but, yeah.
To answer that, then yes, it is possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think to go back to, you know, whether the signs meet our general sign code, we also have outdoor lighting code, and we have a restriction on the amount of light trespass, like foot candles that can be in the right of way or on adjoining properties. So I think the brightness of the sign, while that is difficult for us to measure, you know, just looking at a drawing, you might be restricted on how bright and stark that sign can be just based on that lighting code. And then, you know, to not have it so stark, I would think that you could probably accomplish that not through the materials, but through the type of bulbs, like using a warm yellowish light, right?
You could play with the temperature of a lot of the different lights that we would use. LEDs range from anywhere where it's like a high temperature, 9,000 Kelvin, something like that, and you get a more blue look to it, to where it's very, very intense, so all the way down, and you can get into the 3,000 range where you get that more like yellow spectrum. A lot of the LED products out there offer similar to the bulbs, and those can actually also come in different temperatures as well. One of the other functions is that you can actually put them on dimmer switches, so you actually do have the ability to kind of tone down some things. So it's kind of, you know, so if there is, like you were saying, like the foot candles coming out and the light trespass and stuff, that can be addressed or at least modified with actually pretty minimal impact to really what's going on. I did want to address one more point that you had brought up, which was actually the use of the gooseneck lighting. And I think.
I don't know if that's what it's
Yeah,
called, but
it's the
something,
downlighting.
you know, yeah, because you see that on a lot of, you know, older buildings, which kind
Yes.
of, you know,
The interchangeable letters are actually a clear plastic material. They're durable and meant to be outside, and they don't discolor easily. What happens though is when they're not internally lit or lit from the backside, you get a real gloss effect, and so it looks like glass up there, and it makes it difficult to read. Plus, I know right at the beginning of the meeting, you guys were discussing the intent of attaching these signs in a way that it didn't damage the building. By swapping to that lighting method, you actually are probably having more penetrations than what the sign would actually have into the wall, just by bringing out the lighting to the outside, because it does not exist currently. So just kind of as a, hey, that's, you know, all factors considered, you know, salvaging the facade is, I think, one of those considerations too, so.
I think you could also make a case that that kind of lighting would lean toward creating a false history by looking old. So I think I would rather work with the border and find a mutually acceptable solution to that.
So I'll split my comments into what for specifically to the approval tonight, and then maybe just some more of my personal thoughts that are not necessarily related to the approval or not. So I think the design for the sign on the corner and on the Washington facade, I think pretty great. Pretty great. I like the design. Looks good. I think it's appropriate for what you want to do. Speaking to Denise's comment about the second sign, I won't make a judgment on whether it's necessary or not, but if you think it's needed, I think the design is fine, so I'm okay with it, and I don't see that there's a need to remove it or anything like that. For the seventh, the front facade, I agree with the sense that the theater lighting could create false history, and I would suggest that be replaced with some other type of border. Whether that's, if you pull from the design elements that you've used in the other signage with the red or something to make it more cohesive, I think you can, make that determination on your own. I do also agree with the adding more relief between the architectural features of the brick design, so that brick spacing, I'm supportive of that as well, that we put that in the conditions. So perhaps you reduce it to 3 lines rather than 4 lines. I don't know if that's standardized spacing or whether you can adjust that, whatever. So I plan to support approving it with the conditions that Kelly suggested. My only kind of personal comment on design that I wasn't sure that I understood was whether you're using both entrances alternatively or whether they have different purposes, because I know that you said something about a space above or not, and so that wasn't immediately clear to me from the signage. So perhaps that can be clear. I don't know how in the, particularly on this front door, I wasn't sure if that's an entrance too, or if you're supposed to, because the arrow points to the side, you're only supposed to go to the side. That was but that's a personal comment, not related to approving it or not.
Sure.
those doors go up.
They do from the inside, I think you can access it from the inside and then from the outside as well, right?
Yeah, my name is Manish Patel. I am part of the Oddfellows group, and just to answer your question, there are different exit ways for emergency exits as well, and so we don't want to ever diminish an exit way for safety reasons as well, because that will narrow how many people could get out of it. But it is an entrance way to the lounge area, to the back area. The far right door that goes into the deli, which is for stopping in and grabbing some sandwiches or some meats or something like that. There is a door that goes from the back side as well that could go up to the event hall. And then the main entrance right there in the middle also goes upwards or right into the main restaurant area too as well. So there's like multiple uses for those doors.
And there can be additional interior signage as well. We haven't really, I mean, I'm not sure if you've been to the Lucky Lab in Multnomah before, but they don't advertise on the outside at all that there's an event space upstairs, but everyone in the neighborhood knows there's an event space upstairs. So I think it's one of those things that'll eventually become common knowledge within the neighborhood, that they know that there's going to be something there.
So I used to work for a caterer.
Oh, nice.
And I helped him when he was getting ready to open and stuff, so that there was all kinds of Oddfellow stuff down in the basement that he just gave me, but
Nice.
anyway, and I know that, I don't know if there's still a leak problem down there, but anyway, but the center door, that just goes straight upstairs, right? Or have
The
they,
side door.
those double doors with the lights on?
It does, that does.
Yeah, that just
That
goes
one.
straight
Yeah.
upstairs, and then the one to the left goes into the restaurant and then into the deli.
That's correct.
Okay, I wasn't sure if they had like knocked, because it's
No,
been a
no.
number of years, I didn't know if they had knocked, an entrance into either
Right.
one of those. Okay, cool.
So you're exactly right. The center one does go directly up to the event hall. And then the back entrance
There's a
does
small
go
one.
into the event hall
Right.
and also goes into the lounge area.
Right. Okay, cool.
And that does help with loading and unloading too as
Yeah.
well.
Do they have an elevator? Have they ever
No,
put in
they used to
any-
have one in there, but
It
it's
was
been covered up right now. So
scary.
we're still debating to
Scary.
get that revitalized
Yeah.
again.
I think that was more, I don't know if that was an elevator or more like kind of a lift that they used to,
I think it was a service elevator for food and
yeah.
running the food
yeah,
up and down.
Wasn't for public.
Because I know up in the top floor, I mean, we still have all those chandeliers that were there for the event space,
Oh, wow.
for the weddings and what they were using it previously for as well.
Cool. When we first went in there was a wicker casket that they used in their ceremonies. It's up in the, yeah.
I don't
if
think
you
it's
look-
there now,
you
but
should-
it could be in
You
the
should look
basement.
into some of their
Yeah.
practices. It's like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. But it's
But
it's an
definitely the
awesome
old
building.
usage, when it was an event space
Right,
up top for
Weatherford,
the weddings
yeah, it
and
was,
the ballrooms and that, it was beautiful.
We had a chamber there once upstairs.
So we've talked about the stark color. I think we've arrived at an understanding there.
Yes.
And we've talked about the border space outside the sign, letting some brick show, as Kelly suggested, one brick width above and below the reader board sign. How important is it to you to have the illumination around the reader board?
I think it'd be pretty important just to really marquee the events that we do have going on there, or whether we have a community event or whatnot. I am kind of open to your suggestion on having the neon go around it. And that's something that I could talk with my partner about as well, but that's something that we definitely can consider as well.
Something that's soft.
Correct.
Neon can be very bright,
Bright.
but doesn't have
Right.
to be,
Absolutely.
okay?
Even another suggestion was, I know we have it kind of offset a little bit, up and down a little bit, maybe just one line going through. That's another suggestion as well.
I'm not,
On the
You're talking
bulbs.
about one row.
If you kind of go, yeah,
Instead of staggering them.
it says staggered.
I think in
Well,
general,
again, I'm inclined to think that still conveys that theater marquee tone that we're trying to get away from. But a single or double fluorescent tube around there could call attention to it in a quiet kind of a way.
can you go back to where there's, not a sign there, you had a
Page
picture?
6, no, page. Hold on. Here. Yeah, that's the one.
There, because there is, oh, I thought it was up further. I was gonna say, it looks like there's a like a hole there where they can, you know, the electrical.
There
See-
was previously, if you look at it,
There was a
there was
sign
some
that,
type of signage that went up top
Yeah.
and all the way in the bottom too.
Right.
And you kind of see the brackets on the right and left of it too as well, those hole
Right.
marks right there.
I think in general, one of the things to always consider too is not necessarily, I know the first idea that comes to mind can be the theaters, just because I know just historically that is one of the most common uses of those bulbs. But in general, I think it's actually a bulb that was used back in that time more than anything. I mean, Olfen's Car Wash up in Seattle actually is still historically one of the most iconic signs that's there.
Which one?
And it's a pink elephant.
oh, yeah, I know, yeah, right by the.
They use that
by
exact
the-
same sign, and that's actually because that
It
sign
has
was-
those clear,
was made.
the clear bulbs.
Correct. It's one of the few spinning signs
Whoa,
that's still allowed
hello.
in Seattle, but there's a lot of other uses. I mean, if you really go out and go to like one of the
And you do
fairs
see-
or any sort of like an attraction. I mean, burger joints back in that day and restaurants in general were using that style
The
of
clear,
lighting.
yeah.
So I know that the first example was saying like, hey, that reminds me of a theater is kind of what jumps out to a lot of people, but I don't necessarily want you guys to feel like that's the only use for those, because there were a lot of those types of bulbs in general, but
Right, but
yeah,
those-
marquee was common.
But the way you have it, and it's probably just an artist, you know, rendition, it
Right.
has, you know, the scattered ones and stuff. I think if you had just, you know, maybe along the top, or I don't know, you know, the bulbs all the way around, or,
Can I add a suggestion too? I know one thing that's becoming a little bit more popular too is those Edison bulbs. Those,
well, that's the clear,
I mean,
yeah, with the
clear
little,
ones like
where you can
that.
see the
So
doohickey
we're open
thing
to those type
inside.
of bulbs or suggestions as well.
The other way to modify it possibly too would be to, similar to doing the single line of the bulbs, would be just to reduce the frequency. So that it doesn't look as like compact or dense, something like that.
Well, and also
Still kind of
cuts
meets
down
in the
on the-
middle. Yeah,
right.
exactly. You
Yeah,
know,
'cause
so
you don't
there's
want it to-
alterations that could be done to that kind of speckled look, and still kind of win on both sides. So.
Okay.
I still think bulbs in theater, I mean, neon, I think back to the days of the diners and more restaurants than I do with those bulbs. I mean, is it more of the entertainment you're trying to go for? Because that's still theater entertainment,
I think it's more on the entertainment side.
food.
Food and entertainment, of course. I think the neon, I like your suggestion on that. That's something that we just heard today, and I mean, that's something that we could definitely add to it instead of doing the bulbs as well.
How do you feel about that, Grant?
About neon?
Yeah.
Well,
Too
my
bright.
professional branding as a marketing professional would be not to add a new element that's not on the other signs, but to rather use push out, border. I think a lit border is great.
A constant, I mean,
Yeah, however they do it, I don't care. I think a lit border is good. I would say remove the bulbs, but lit border, good. Whether you choose to do neon or do it more in the sense that the other signs are where it's part of the, I don't know what you call it. I think we call it push out or something. I don't know, but that can be up to them, I guess.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
There was mention of kind of stretching that sign on
make it
7.
more
Keeping the.
elongated.
Yeah, elongate that because they're gonna be reducing the size to the brick. So perhaps elongating it to help with that space. But I also, someone had mentioned changing the border from black to more of that brick color that you see around the
So it's
trim
not
and the
so-
windows.
Yeah,
So-
and still have the black
Still have a warmer feel
words,
to it.
that the lettering
Yeah.
and stuff, because then it kind of more, because when I first saw it, you know, I just thought it was I didn't know, I thought it was polka dots, you know, and I'm like,
And that could just be the digital rendering.
oh, yeah.
Sorry
Well, no,
about that.
and I,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
I
can see,
totally
yeah,
get that.
and-
But I mean, you know, and that just doesn't, that's a stately building and, you know, just,
And we want to respect the space.
Right, and try to just kind of subdue it a little bit.
Is looking at where, I mean, being on Seventh, the traffic that's gonna be able to see that sign is really one direction.
You'd be
And
looking up
then
and
the
getting
part,
it away.
yeah, and then the stop traffic going down Seventh.
Have you thought about, because they did have a sign out there that, hung out this way. Is there a way to, and I don't know if this is even kosher or not, but having a double-sided, have it come out and have the lettering on both sides? Because it would be easier to read it from both directions. Yeah, I don't even know if there's something like that
Are we talking
out
about
there.
something that differentiates from the original proposal where we had an angled projection sign?
Well,
Are you talking about
but
like
not
a
an angled
blade
one.
sign that comes
Just
straight
the,
out of?
yeah, I don't know what they're
I
called.
think she was talking about a sign that just comes out like this.
So-
Here's
Yeah.
the-
No, not like this.
Not like that.
Not like this, but just
It'd be like the market,
Oh.
but
a blade,
A blade.
or some kind of sign that has, the wording on both sides, because
So
like he said, when you're driving, you're actually having to look this way as opposed to if it's out.
Yeah, no matter what you do with the sign, it's a limited audience, if you will, that's gonna see this.
And it's, plus it's a kind of a distraction, when you're driving. I mean, not that that has anything to do with this, but I mean, and kind of like the way on this right-hand side, the hardware, I mean, that's
The first
way
level.
too big, but I mean, just, I mean, that kind of, you call it a what, a blade sign?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I don't know if they make those to where you can have the lettering on both sides.
I don't know if you could put a sign that would go like the hardware like that, just because I know you have a lot of poles and posts up there. And so it
But they've had
probably-
signs hang out like that before,
Yeah,
up
but
there
you
above the
see
door.
where the sign is, sort of 19, whatever.
There's a lot
let's
of,
go
like-
back to that corner piece.
It's pretty busy in that corner
previous
right
slide.
there.
You see what's there now,
Right.
where the proposed vertical sign is, if they try to put something.
No, I'm not talking about on the corner, I'm
talking
talking about above the front, that double
Oh, so you're
door.
saying, okay.
Yeah, above the double door, so that it's separated, you'll be able to see the paints,
I think
your
that kind of
sign.
takes away from the building, because we wanted to still have that building the way it looked, but when you have something like that, it kind of takes it away, maybe, the dimension of it, I guess.
I mean,
the two comments from like the fabricator side. One would be that that sign is going to be a lot more imposing in order to get it. I think he is trying to keep it low profile where it's like, hey, it's more against the wall. The viewing angles are going to be tough, I think, no matter what. I mean, there's awnings in that area and stuff too, so even pedestrian traffic and stuff are going to struggle to even see that one. Also, just from a lighting perspective for illuminating something like that coming
Yeah.
off the building, you're probably looking at somewhere in 18 inches thick. So it's not going to be like low profile.
Right.
It's going to have some depth
Because
to
it needs that,
Yeah. Yeah, and then if you essentially bring it 5 feet off the wall, then you really kind of have this big slab kind of up there. And
It
so I
would
think the wall sign in
detract.
general would actually more maintain of what the original building
think
would
it's
look like
there.
compared to
Oh.
something newer like that, so.
Okay.
yeah.
That was just- I
So
just-
if-
No, yeah.
If you're content to stick with the wall sign, then does that address the concern that you were just about to raise? I mean, you just say.
I'll look at Denise.
Well, the sign code, I don't think allows for 2 projecting signs on a building.
Okay.
That was the point of information, but I did have a question.
Oh.
Right, well, and that's where it gets complicated because you can have a projecting sign on each facade, but there's one on the corner, so
Which one does it?
does
look?
it count towards the front
Which one
facade or the
is it?
side
Yeah.
facade? So I think that's a complicated, but I don't
Okay.
think we need to go there because it.
Okay,
you
that's
just
fine,
don't-
Good.
disregard then.
What
Just
Denise,
brainstorm.
what Denise, a note from Denise was about the existing awnings that do have, restaurant bar written on them now, and wondering if those were proposed to stay or change or be removed at all. Because that actually would be relevant to the board,
Signage.
to signage if there's any change to that.
We didn't get a chance to kind of look at that aspect of it. I mean, initially, we wanted to keep it, just keeps the rain out for the customers. And it's a spot where they could kind of just be underneath and while they're waiting for the street. No, I think you guys are talking about removing the awning.
Well, we were just wondering if you are planning to keep the awning and the words on
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
or
that's-
if
Can I
you're,
clarify?
Future uses.
Oh,
Anyway, they had said that they were going to keep the awnings but possibly change the color.
Mm.
And I wanted to be sure that the material and the style was going to be
Same.
consistent with the building.
right,
That was what I was
Oh,
concerned
okay.
about.
I feel
Yeah.
that's a
what-
safe,
that's what
Yeah.
Steve said.
yeah, that's a safe statement.
Yeah.
We would not do lime green on that.
Yeah,
building.
we
Okay,
definitely want to
Okay.
clean it up. It's,
Yeah, it really more if anything, it's just a
So-
recondition that,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay.
They just need to be clean, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
yeah, we do that.
Yeah, so if you are changing the awning, just know that, check with me.
Absolutely.
It will probably meet the policies and the Secretary of Interior standards, but I should look at it to make sure. I wanted to comment on something that Claire said about the color of the edge of the sign. I mean, there is a lot of black on this building, and so I don't think that black would be incompatible. And then I think that if the illumination of the cabinet is more on the yellow side than the bright white, I think that would probably accomplish the what you're talking about as far as it not being very stark. And I don't know that the black outline would have to be changed to a different color, you know, if the lighting were a little bit more yellow. Just a thought.
I think on our standpoint, what Tony was saying was, if you change the to yellow, it's just the readability of it.
Right.
I think more than anything though, is just switching to something a little bit warmer instead of cooler. Maybe we can start with that.
Yeah.
And really see sort of where we stand with that before we progress. I don't think we need to make it like, you know, buttercup yellow. We're not
Oh,
gonna
right.
compromise
No, I
that.
just mean a warm.
Yeah, just to
rather-
soften it. That's really what
Yeah.
we're talking. We're just softening.
where
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to here is a condition of approval that we can approve tonight that you can live with and
Sure.
get the job done. So we're down now to, I think, just on the 7th Street side, we're down to the question of the border of the sign. And on the Washington Street side, we haven't yet fully discussed the question of one sign or two. Let's see if we can resolve those two things.
I don't really have trouble with two of them.
I don't either, particularly when you look
One's
at
a
the
directional.
picture on page 6 that shows just how big
That area
that
is-
side of the building is. I understand completely why you want two signs there, and I have no objection to that.
And so is the lounge just gonna be in the back and that has a separate entrance?
Yes, so as far as I'm aware, there's a separate entrance for the lounge down below, and then it also has an alternating
To
staircase
go
up to the top
upstairs
of
to
the
the
events.
back, right? But, and then from the restaurant, will you still be able to get back into the
You
lounge
can.
also?
You
Because I
can-
mean,
you'll
that's the
have
way
a
it is
ADA
now
restaurant
and
right
stuff,
to it.
so, okay. Cool.
Okay, so
Yeah.
One
What-
clarification
what I-
I did want to make in part of the report that came out is that particular sign is actually not illuminated,
It's what?
Oh.
non-illuminated.
Oh,
The two on the
okay.
side.
These?
The directional one?
The
or-
one on the left.
Right, the
Yeah, the one
directional
above the
one.
door is intended to be illuminated from what the renderings and stuff are
Mhm.
showing. The one that's just above the windows is not going to be.
Just a plain directional.
Correct.
And that makes
And I
it
think
less
it's mainly due to
obtrusive
kind of
too.
the atypical nature of where the entrance is on the
Mhm.
building.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah, I don't
it's in
have
the
a-
back side, that's.
It's
what-
pretty
Right.
much function over much else. so.
Right. Okay, I don't really
Okay.
have a
I have
problem.
no issues with it.
So I think we're all in agreement on that. So that leaves the border on the reader board sign. And I'm not a sign designer, believe it or not. I'm not going to try and design your sign for you. So
I agree with that.
I,
I think the third, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the condition as Kelly wrote it, I think is fine, where we leave the discretion up to them. We can approve that it's a border and it can be lit, and they can decide materials and design and whichever within those parameters, I think is fine.
And then Kelly knows kind of, and so they would have, so you're talking about having Kelly approve the.
Well, yeah, I mean, within if it varies wildly from the design as elements as the other, I mean,
Yeah.
it's subjective, but
Yeah, I think.
we know, I think,
mean,
what.
if you want to add more detail to it, that's fine, but I think that, if they
They've got
propose
the
something
idea, yeah.
different from the bulbs, that, does not pose a problem as far as any of the other Secretary of Interior standards. I think there are lots of options out there, that you could go with, and then I think we can work together. And then if it is something that I'm not really comfortable with, I have questions about, then we bring it back to you.
can you put the 3 conditions of approval on the screen?
Yes, I can.
When are you guys gonna open? Do you have a projected?
We're hoping for, end of May,
Oh, wow,
end of May.
cool.
I think we're working on flooring next, restoring the wood flooring and stuff like that.
Are you still in the public hearing, or is the public hearing closed?
Public hearing is still open. So I just wanted you to be able to see what it is we're talking about with condition 3 there.
Thank you. So just the height of one brick, okay, between the edges of the sign and the red brick detail in the building. Yeah, and I think we agree
You
with
got
that.
that, right,
Okay.
Yes, so, the condition is required in previous condition, of course. Remove the bulbs from the perimeter of the sign, and so we'll have to draft up some other drawing options to be able to present them after we consult with our client.
Okay,
The one thing I think we should add to the third condition is just clarify if we're allowing it to be a lit border or an unlit border. I'm okay with it being lit.
A lit border or what?
Unlit.
Unlit,
Yeah.
Is the
oh,
border itself, is it illuminated,
Yeah, is there
Right,
any?
I got
illumination
And I
there?
think that I'm fine with it being illuminated.
okay.
Okay, so we can
So
say,
it's okay not specifying.
or other elements, let's say, lit or unlit.
Yeah.
Does that work? Is that grammatically correct?
On a personal opinion, with the tree, do you know if that blooms? And Denise, maybe you know better, that the tree that's in front,
Yes,
does that bloom, and how big is that?
it was planted in 2016, and it leaves out.
So that's what I'm concerned with on a personal level, is like how effective does that sign, or ineffective does that sign become, and for how many months out of the year does nobody see it? That's just something to think about, I thought about, so.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's something we didn't think about either, so.
well,
Appreciate
if
that.
it was leafing out, it'd be doing it now, so this is the
Yeah.
good time of the year for you to,
Yeah.
observe it and see how,
Absolutely.
and it ain't gonna get any smaller.
And just to clarify,
Okay.
is the board, so if the size, the height of the sign gets reduced to leave that space,
Top and bottom.
is the board okay if the sign itself gets wider? And if so, are there
The same square
parameters?
footage, but it would just be,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any preferences as far as that goes, but, I'd hate to have to come back because we weren't clear.
Yeah.
can you put the
So essentially it's
dimensions
opening
back?
and opening for a little bit just
Just
to
it's,
take.
I think it was
open-
7
Take back the space.
foot by
That's just to be like, yeah, let's think about it, 'cause at least that gives us a.
It was 7 foot 11, so 8 feet. Oh, no, it's actually 8'9" by,
Yeah, the total
2.5.
square foot right now is 31.4. So if we were to take off from the top and bottom, we would try to be around that number if
Okay.
possible, or less depending on what they want.
okay, cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope we have an understanding here.
So is there a motion?
And
Can I just to be super clear in the conditions, can I suggest that we add one that says the sign size, or we can add to number 2, that the width of the sign may be increased to keep the square footage at 31.4?
That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Or is
Somewhere in
different
that
number?
right, no more than,
Yeah,
that.
close to that, definitely.
I'm just gonna go ahead and type while we're here, so we
No
all see it.
problem.
okay.
And we do get a copy of this sent out tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for your help on this.
Well, thank you for all your great feedback.
Thank you.
Very good. In that case, now having heard from the public and from the applicant, I'm prepared to close the public hearing. And I would entertain a motion regarding conditions of approval.
do you want to read all, well, you've really, this is, you've changed it in here, so this is what the motion would be.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
Because to me, I mean, there's not any direction as far as the brightness of it, and I don't know if we, you know, I know they have, they understand, but I don't know if we need to
Well,
have it.
it's
How would you
always,
address that?
I don't
it's good to,
Maximize the number of lumens?
I think it's, it would be good to add something.
just to keep the.
To be clear that, the warm or soft light needs to be used
As
for the
opposed to-
internally illuminated portion of the sign.
As opposed to the bright white or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I don't think, I would,
it's kind of hard to
we can't
describe
really
that.
get really technical as far as
Okay.
the LED,
Brightness and stuff. yeah.
right, the numbers that you were, the temperature, and the information, the numbers that you were talking about earlier, but I think we can talk about soft and warm. So if you want to add a
Warm
condition.
temperature, I mean, or whatever, you know, the lighting should be of a warmer temperature. It sounds,
I mean, the idea is just to not have it visually obtrusive in any way, right? So.
In the cabinet. Within the cabinet?
okay.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
is that sufficient for you all?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And then,
Because I think that was one of my thing was that it was, you know,
so it's gonna be a little bit difficult to, you know, it's a little
Adjust.
bit subjective.
right. But I
but it's
think
better.
they have a pretty good idea.
Okay,
I move that we approve, oh my God, whatever the number is. The 000.
you can say HR 1901.
Okay, I move to approve 1901 with the recommended conditions of approval 1 through 4 as
I'll second
presented.
that.
All right, Board Member Blythe,
Aye.
Board Member Met,
Aye.
Board Member Stobie,
Aye.
and Chair Basinger.
Aye.
Woohoo.
All right.
That was
It is
only an hour and
approved,
15
subject to the
minutes, not bad.
conditions you're looking at there.
Oh,
I thank you.
So I'll send that, the final notice of decision to you tomorrow with, so you have this in writing. And I look forward to working with you as you move forward.
and thank you for being so amicable about, you know, working with that, so.
So go forth and bring Oregon City some great barbecue. I'll be first in line.
We don't have one here.
Okay, item 4. Item 4 on the agenda is Kenema Family Friendly Route Project. Kelly, I believe you have a staff report on that.
I do, thank you. Let me pull up.
Good luck, thank you.
The, there we go.
Okay, so the design guidelines, we have design guidelines for major public improvements. And the board, we require board review for major public improvements. We don't have a definition of major public improvements. So, in the past, the 7th Street streetscape project came to the board as a major public improvement. In recent past, thank you, you all heard information about the High Street new curb bulb outs, and you decided that didn't fall under a major public improvement, and so you didn't require that be brought to the board as a public hearing. So what we've got today is some new striping and signage in the Kenema neighborhood as part of the family-friendly route project and the McLaughlin-Kenema Trail project. And I'm bringing this to you so that to give you a chance to look at it and then decide if you think it's a major public improvement and you want to review it, then you can let us know and then we'll bring it back as an actual public hearing. So what it includes is new 20-mile-per-hour speed limit signs with the family-friendly placard attached to it. It looks like that. And so there will be 6 of those signs that will go in at the entries to the neighborhood. Sorry about that. And so that would be from South End up here, if you can see that, from South End Road onto 5th Avenue, at the 4 entry streets from McLaughlin, and then also coming, if you're leaving Kenema Children's Park on 4th Avenue, a reminder that it's 20 miles per hour. There will also be proposed 34, give or take, total on-street pavement markings with this symbol here. I have a bigger, actually I have
The real thing.
a life size. So that's the actual size of it, 2 foot by 3 foot would be
On the
on the
asphalt.
asphalt.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's gonna be on
Oh,
the
because I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, that's,
So,
You can't see around corners.
so it's kind of like.
I was just like, talk about blocking visibility.
Oh, that's definitely major. So the the size of a normal Sharrow that you see with the bike and the arrows around it, that's about 6 feet, and this is 3 feet.
3 feet, okay.
To account for the smaller street size in Kenema, we wanted it to kind of fit
More
a
scale.
little
And the
bit better.
fact that kids are closer to the ground, so they don't need a lot of space to see that.
And then we're adding some stop signs at 3rd and Ganong here, one at 4th and Blanchard as well.
There's no stop signs in any of those, are there?
Correct.
Okay.
There are only stop signs here at
That's right
4th
there,
and
but-
Miller,
right.
and I think we're replacing those, like relocating those at 4th and Miller. And then there's a little bit of additional on-street striping to attempts to visually narrow the intersections where the pavement kind of gets wider in an attempt to calm and slow down traffic a little bit. And so it's a light touch. The McLaughlin-Kenema Trail has kind of a list of different traffic calming options that can be done. And some of them are a little bit more involved than this, like speed humps and things like that. This would just be using paint, and it would be at, let's see, Hedges and 3rd coming in, a little bit at 3rd and Ganong, at 4th and Miller, and then up along South End or High Street as you come in. to Fifth Avenue. And stop bars, right, along with the stop sign. So the white kind of bar, I apologize, this isn't really readable. I have a large version
Go like
here, if you want to take a look at it, before you go. So the question to the board really is, does this fall under major public improvement, or is it something that kind of you can consider to be a staff level type approval?
What's the red? I can't read.
The red.
Down, where you come down off the
Down
south
on
end.
the
Right
undeveloped
where that,
end of Fifth
where that
Avenue.
small village was.
There, yeah.
There are arrows, showing, no, how can I I wonder if I can.
I was trying to enlarge it.
Chevron, it's chevron arrows.
Yeah, they're the chevrons. So that, I
They're
think
already
it's just calling out that to either make sure those are replaced if they're deteriorated, and to trim the trees, because there's a lot of vegetation that kind of grows over those signs and obscures them. So we need to just get that trimmed back.
Okay.
Okay. I just
So,
couldn't read it.
Are there?
I think it's worth mentioning as well that you made this presentation last week at the Kenema Neighborhood Association meeting and got input from the neighborhood,
Absolutely.
which was, I think, entirely supportive. I can't recall a negative comment brought up.
I can't either. Yeah, we've been working with the neighborhood on this, and of course with our Public Works Department, and that it came out of the McLaughlin and Kenema Trail planning process. And so it's one of the implementation actions to make that trail happen.
I think it sounds good. You know, the streets in Kenema are so much more narrower. And so it really, I mean, this is kind of, to me, it's like a no
Bringing up
duh.
safety and,
Yeah. And it just makes people aware.
I'm on board.
I don't have a problem with it.
Is the painted narrowing of the intersections, is that sort of a interim step to see if that works and then potentially actually narrow the streets physically, or?
Well, yeah, it is all we heard people were comfortable with to start. So we're gonna monitor that and see how it works. And then if something a little more robust is needed, then we would go back to the neighborhood and back to the Historic Review Board to kind of talk about the options. And that is one of the options, is actually, adding vegetation or something to those areas.
So to the question of whether these improvements require historic review, I don't see anything there that can't be undone with a paintbrush.
I'll clarify, it is thermoplastic, so it is a little bit more permanent than paint. It's a lot easier for a Public Works Department to maintain. So if it is removed, it requires like actual scraping it
Scraping it.
from the pavement.
Right,
Pressure wash.
right.
Yeah, no, a pressure wash wouldn't do it.
No.
And you can't just paint over it either, I don't
Bond's
think.
Because
pretty
it's,
good.
it's
Oh, that's
lifted.
one pretty, okay.
Slightly.
They have to grind it off.
Yep,
Wow.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
The one thing, and maybe that's what that little bitty notation says at Fourth and Ganong. What does it read in that little square box or rectangular box?
This box?
Says,
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Says install slow ODOT sign number OW 15-1 and post.
There was-
How are you reading that?
There was-
I magnified it.
There was discussion, he did like this.
There's a way to that.
You're the most tech
Well,
savvy of all.
I'm sitting here going like this,
Stretch it,
going.
pinch it.
You can open it out of the packet and then you can.
The one thing I see that's missing from what we discussed at the neighborhood association meeting is the center line on that corner. to
Right here.
try to
Yeah,
teach people which side of the road they're supposed to drive on.
we
Stay
have
on
to, we have to talk with our engineers to figure out what the best approach is there. So we've shared that with them and we haven't decided yet if that's something that would work or exactly what that would look like. But we're gonna
Drive
try.
steel pipes in the center.
Oh, good Lord.
Okay,
Denise has.
I have a question for you.
sure.
Denise McGriff, and I live in Oregon City. My question would be, since everything in this National Register District should be run by SHPO, what is SHPO's opinion about it? Have you run this by SHPO?
We haven't,
I would strongly suggest that you do that. Just,
sure.
they may say, no, it doesn't apply, and they don't care, but since it is a National Register District and it is under the guidelines of the keeper, I think anything that happens in Kenema should, as a courtesy, just send it off to them, and that way you've covered all your bases.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I agree.
That way, nobody can question and say, well,
point.
you've checked with them. So, and I'm sure Joy will get right back to you. So, anyway, thank you. It's a CYA thing.
See why I haven't had that in a while. You know what I mean?
Okay, so are we in concurrence regarding the lack of a need for historic review on this?
I don't
Well,
think
given the
they need to.
comment from Denise,
Well, if
We should
SHPO
run
says, if SHPO says so, then that would change it.
Right.
Yeah, but I can bring it back to you if SHPO says any, that,
Barring,
Yeah.
barring
Any objection from
contrary
them?
input.
I think, yeah, the criteria we looked at for the improvements on High Street were that it didn't have any, there was no decorative design elements to it. There was no lighting changes. There was no landscaping design being done. Any of that, if it's just markings and street work and.
Well, and making it handicap accessible, which is required.
Although we do have to keep in mind that that was outside the National Register District, and this is.
True, that's just a
Agreed.
conservation district, yeah.
So I think if there were significant, like, street landscaping things happening or something to go along with it, then maybe that would, but.
Or if they put those signs up vertically. And you have 34 of them?
they're gonna be on all of the streets. So I think spaced,
Wow.
like every 300 feet or so.
amazing.
That,
It's kind of,
to
Maybe
me, almost
overkill.
seems like
overkill.
overkill
Yeah.
as far as the numbers. I
Did
mean,
we talk about that quantity at the neighborhood meeting?
I think I said 34, but I don't know if anyone.
Well, when you
commented
start
on it.
I
looking
didn't
at
pick
the-
up on it,
Yeah.
but
Because I mean,
How many blocks?
every 300 feet,
Oh,
so.
300 feet.
Yeah, so so I think, I have to open this up in a different program to be able to enlarge it, apparently.
Is that two per block?
each block is 212 feet.
Okay, so.
So
every
there's
1 and 1/16.
one, when you come in right around here, can you guys see my mouse there on
Yeah.
your screens? So there, and then this is the next one, this is the next one.
Oh,
This is the next one. So we originally, the plans that we got from so it's everywhere you see that little PM marking. We originally had our consultant recommending every almost 120 feet.
whoa,
Right,
That's a
and,
lot.
and we went out there and we said, one, that's kind of expensive, because it's a lot of markings to buy. And then two, we probably don't need that many, and so our, Public Works folks went out there and kind of looked at the terrain.
elevations.
You know, kind of where, if there's a little hill you go over, where should we put them, where does it make sense, where's their curve? And they came up with this plan to probably almost cut the number of, the original number in half, and then find the best locations. So they might be, they might change a little bit in the field once we finally,
Just 34 for that many, I mean, personally, that
Yeah.
just seems like a lot.
yeah. Well, there are a lot of intersections. We could try, I mean, we could go back and try and reduce them a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think the idea was to
Well, I don't know
get
about that.
whichever way people are driving, they're gonna come across one on each block.
I mean, I could see, coming off McLaughlin, at your entry points, having them obviously they're, set back a little bit, I think, from the intersection. And then,
They're actually not
Oh, they're-
on any of the entry streets. They're only on, they start on Third.
oh, I thought you said those little,
They're only on the paths to the park, I think.
So are there ovals that don't have the PM? They have something else in them?
Yeah, so these ovals that are on the entry streets, those are the speed limit signs.
How about the cluster over to to
All
your right?
this.
Yeah, all that.
Those are, stop bars, stop signs, and then there's a pavement marking on either side, like leading up to the intersection.
That's a always stop.
Four stop.
Three-way
Okay.
stop.
three, yeah.
So,
And then the same way with, is it Miller and Fourth?
Yes.
Wow.
I knew there was no way they were gonna put that sign 10 times in that small. That's what it is, but, yeah, okay.
I trust the consultant and the city staff and
Yeah.
traffic engineers to do a better job than we can on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's what they're
that's
for.
true.
Okay,
Okay.
so are we in
Yeah.
consensus that this does not require historic review unless SHPO says otherwise?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, there's your direction.
Thank you.
So you don't need a motion,
I don't think
just
so.
direction, okay.
And final item on the agenda is communications.
Yes, thanks. I just have two quick things. One, the planning commission met last night and the city commission had asked them to have another conversation about whether to allow 3 and 4 plexes in the historic commercial zone, which is along McLaughlin into Kenema. That's the only area of the city which is designated as historic commercial. So that zone allows commercial uses, anything allowed in our mixed use zones, and single family homes, because we had historically a mixture in Kenema of single family within the commercial area. So it's the only commercial area in the city, only zone, which also allows single family and duplex uses. Currently, that zone allows multifamily uses, which is defined as 3 or more units in one building. Everything is subject to historic review board guidelines and review process. The new code amendments redefine multifamily as 5 or more units in one structure, and then add a new use of 3 or 4plex. And so if we were to be consistent with today's zone and permitted uses, all of those things would still be allowed in historic commercial. But the planning commission last night decided to recommend that 3, 4plexes and multifamily uses be removed from the historic commercial zone as permitted uses. And the rationale was that I wasn't there, but my understanding is that the design, they were worried about the designs of those and that didn't fit. However, it would still everything would still come to the historic review board. And so just want to let you know that is a recommendation. There's no action required by the board, but that's going to go back to city commission next month.
Yeah, I appreciate their decision on that. I think it's the right decision. And I would add the perennial parking shortage in Kenema would not be helped by adding more multifamily units.
Yeah, and so the upper Kanema on the hillside is zoned R6, which is
Yeah.
single-family zone. It wouldn't allow, multifamily. And so on McLaughlin is really where we have the commercial
It
uses.
is only on McLaughlin, but there are some vacant lots between McLaughlin and First Avenue
Right.
where there has been, and I'm sure you're more aware of it than I am, but some interest in constructing either attached townhouses or some such thing on those
That would have to come to us.
It would, and the design guidelines don't allow attached townhomes. So the design of any, if we did allow any 3 or more unit uses, whether it's 3, 4-plex or multifamily, it would not be, we wouldn't be approving any townhome style or attached housing design. It would have to be in some sort of building that had probably one entry and was designed, more like the multifamily uses historically in McLaughlin or something. So there are a lot of ways that a multifamily use could meet the Kanema design guidelines, but it wouldn't meet, the traditional townhomes would not meet the design guidelines. So I
Right.
think maybe there's a little bit of confusion over use versus design, and that 3, 4-plex implies attached townhomes, which in most parts of the city, that is exactly how it would be built. But it wouldn't be built that way in Kanema. But at this point, the recommendation is to not allow those uses whatsoever.
Good.
So then it wouldn't even come to the
It wouldn't,
HRB,
no.
okay.
I mean, it would, only single-family duplex and,
Right.
and commercial uses would be permitted in those zones, or in that zone.
Okay, cool.
So my second announcement is the Preservation Month activities. We're going to award the Ruth McBride Powers Award at the May 1st City Commission meeting. We're recommending the 212 and 216 14th Street for that award. We're hosting a speaker on May 30th. Nancy Nelson with SHPO is going to talk about Pacific Northwest archaeology at Midway Pub. It's going to be a history pub. So we're partnering with the library on that.
Oh, the pints.
Well,
It's,
just history pub, yeah.
oh, okay.
So I'll send an announcement out about that.
Oh, cool.
And then we are also hosting for Preservation Month public tours of the elevator and the promenade. And that's gonna be May 9th and May 11th. And I'll send you those details over email as well. So we'll advertise for those later this week, so that people can sign up.
So May 9th and May 11th?
Yes, it's a Thursday and a Saturday, so
What time on Saturday do you have?
I think 1 o'clock and 2:30
So it's after the parade? The
after the
Teddy Bear
parade.
After
Yes.
Teddy Bear Parade is that day, but
Yes.
that's over by.
It's early in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And we're doing a run-through beforehand, just because I don't think we've ever given that exact tour before. It's actually the elevator staff that are going to host it or lead the tour. So if you're interested in coming to the run-through with some city staff that are going to be there, let me know.
I used to do walking tours, the Dutch Camp and the Laterit Canyon and what was the other one? Anyway, and I have notes because I used to take them along there. So I'd be willing, it was extra research that I had done. So I'd be willing, if they're because I still have my notes, to take copies and send them to them. I don't know.
That's great, yeah. You can send them to me and I can
Oh, okay.
make sure they
Cool,
get
cool,
them.
cool.
And then you're also welcome to come to the run through if you want, and then
I'm
you
gonna be in Ohio.
Well, I think we're doing that on Friday this week, just the practice tour.
Oh, okay.
So if you're interested, just let me know and I'll let you know the details. That's it.
Cool.
Okay. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
9 o'clock.
And do you know what's